Happy Halloween, Pokemon fans! Today, in honor of the spooky occasion, we're going to discuss and bust more Pokemon myths centered around our favorite place, Lavender Town. We've got a few to look at, so let's get started. This is one of two myths often found coupled with Lavender Town Syndrome posts. According to the rumor, it was an animation that was supposed to appear on the third floor Pokemon Tower. The most common posting claims it was included in the first release versions of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, so according to this post it should be in the cartridge I have. Supposedly, the animation was a series of detailed images of some creepy decomposing ham. Viewing them within the game is said to cause headaches, nausea, and in severe cases, hemorrhaging of the brain and lungs, so the only safe way to view them is by digging into the ROM itself and viewing each frame separately. Well, right off the bat I can already think of a ton of holes in this story, but let's address them one by one, shall we? Firstly, let's take a look at the third floor of the Pokemon Tower and see if we can find one. Nothing out of the ordinary, and I've been looking for ages. Maybe if I tried depositing the slip scope in the PC. Ugh, still nothing. There goes my afternoon. Apparently it's not in my copy of the game, though let's keep busting, shall we? Aside from the fact that this rumor is, again, not backed up by any reliable sources, medically, an image causing a lung hemorrhage is just impossible. I'm assuming this part of the rumor is based off the Den-O-Senshi Porygon episode that caused seizures in Japan, due to a sequence of flashing red and blue lights. But even if the image within the game flashed that fast, and in just the right sequence, the only medical condition it could be associated with would be reflex epilepsy. Reflex epilepsy is a cognomen to seizures which are generated by a person's acuteness to sensor stimulation caused by the environment. For example, the children and adults that suffered from seizures due to the Den-O-Senshi Porygon incident had reflex epilepsy. As far as I know, seizures in no way cause lung hemorrhages. I'm assuming they chose to list this symptom because common characteristics of pulmonary hemorrhage include bleeding from the nose and mouth, which can create some creepy imagery. But once again, this sort of thing simply isn't possible to trigger by simply flashing a few frames of animation, no matter how fast in whatever sequence, even in combination with the supposed effects of Lavender Town Syndrome. Lastly, believe it or not, first-gen hacking does exist, so it's not at all impossible to dig into the ROM data. Many people have done so with the Pokemon Green ROM and found none of this stuff. As far as I'm concerned, this myth is busted. This one is pretty similar to the White Hand rumor in that it was included in the things said to cause the aforementioned side effects, including the brain and lung hemorrhaging, and that it was supposed to be in Pokemon Tower in the first versions of Red and Green in Japan. It is the second rumor often coupled with Lavender Town Syndrome postings. Please note that I looked thoroughly at the most commonly circulating form of the rumor and it said nothing about any beta versions. This one claims it was actually in the released form of the game. If any of this was supposed to be beta, then there would be no point in even caring about it because frankly, if we're going to swap what-ifs all day, all we're doing is wasting time. After all, if the developers eventually decided against it, who gives a flying Furby? Seriously, it doesn't matter if it wasn't in the final game. And for the record, QA testers are never kids, so there's no way Game Freak had a bunch of kids beta test the game and they all ended up killing themselves. Kids are extremely expensive to employ because even in Japan in the 90s, there were child labor laws. Game Freak would much rather hire a bunch of adults to do an adult's job because they would give more accurate feedback, do the job better for much less than it would cost to hire children onto the project. Actually, in the credits it says exactly who the debuggers or beta testers for Green were. Wanna guess who? Shigeru Miyamoto, Takashi Kawaguchi, and Sunizaku Ishihara. If these three are really little kids in disguise, they sure fooled me. And I guess if they're dead too, then they must be really good at this whole illusion thing. And if it was beta, there'd be no way to prove or disprove anything. Very, very little is known about the development of the first Pokemon games because Game Freak was a newbie nobody company, and no one thought Pokemon would take off like it did. Any beta ROMs you see floating around are probably definitely fake, and nearly all the things that are said about the beta are rumors. The only concrete things that still exist from the development days of Pokemon are some concept sketches, and they don't tell us very much about what could have been planned. Certainly they don't include anything even remotely related to the things mentioned in these rumors. Anyway, buried alive. So this one is said to happen in place of fighting the ghost of Cubone's mother. On the top floor, where the Rockets are usually found holding Mr. Fuji hostage, a text box was said to appear saying things like, "I'm trapped, I'm lonely, won't you join me?" before initiating a battle. I'm assuming this is allegedly translated from Japanese because the post doesn't include Japanese text for this part of the story, even though it was included in other paragraphs. Once in battle, the trainer sprite is reported to be a decaying corpse crawling out of the ground, and it supposedly has 2 white hands, a Gengar and a Muk for Pokemon. Once defeated, the game would freeze. Apparently though, an extra ending was written into the game by an unknown programmer that consisted of the corpse saying, "Finally, fresh meat," and then dragging the player into the ground, resulting in a game over screen with the corpse eating the player. In addition to the abundance of things wrong with this that were already debunked in my explanation of White Hand, including the fact that none of these images exist anywhere on the ROM, and that crap like this cannot just randomly cause lung hemorrhages, this one is even less believable. For one thing, Cubone's mother is there just like always, and so are the Rockets and Mr. Fuji. For another, if this were actually once ever part of the game, this would mean that no one who had the first versions of Pokemon in Japan was ever able to complete the game, which is simply not true. This rumor says this was written into the code like a final boss, so it was unavoidable, but defeating it causes the game to crash. This means there is no way anyone who bought the game was ever able to finish it, which would have meant instant commercial failure for Pokemon. No one would buy a kid's game, play through it only to have it go complete Zubat crap on them and crash, and then recommend it to their friends. And lastly, an unknown programmer? Really? Have you ever heard of things like project managers or game directors? Their job is to go around and keep tabs on what each of the staff is working on. The guy in this position during the development of Pokemon was none other than Satoshi Tajiri himself. There's no way something like this could slip under the radar of everyone at Game Freak just because some rogue programmer was having a bad day. And by the way, there were a total of 4 programmers. It was a pretty small team. Takenori Oda, Shigeki Morimoto, Tetsuya Watanabe, and Junichi Matsuda. If this programmer was unknown, people really haven't looked into it very much, have they? Probably because it's not real. I don't think I even need to look into this one to know where this came from. Basically, when you battle your rival on the SSN, he has a Raticate. When you battle him in Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town, the Raticate is not part of his party anymore. Why? Well, I think the simplest answer is that Bill's PC storage system probably works for more trainers than just yourself. But rumor has it, in the battle against your rival on the ship, when you knock out that Raticate, you really kill it. I'm not going to jump through hoops to try to debunk this one. I know the reason these rumors exist is just for fun, and frankly I couldn't disprove it or prove it one way or the other if I tried. But I guess I can try and make up my own story about what really happened. Blue, stunned and angered by his defeat by Red aboard the SS Sand, decides he needs to train more. He travels around and eventually his Pokemon are exhausted and he realizes he needs to find a Pokemon Center. Raticate is the only Pokemon in his party that hasn't fainted, but it's badly poisoned and consciousness slips away from it fast. Blue finds himself alone in tall grass without a single Pokemon to defend himself with. Suddenly, a wild glitch Pokemon appears, like the kind you get when you walk into tall grass without a Pokemon, and Blue freaks out and hurls his fainted Raticate at the opposing glitch. This causes the fabric of time and space to rip apart, Hall of Fame data to get scrambled, glitches like Missing No to escape from other dimensions into Kanto, glitch cities to appear off the coast. But, just as everything seems hopeless, the message, Blue is out of usable Pokemon, Blue blacked out appears on the screen. The next thing he knows, Blue is at a Pokemon Center handing his Pokeballs over to Nurse Joy. Finally, it seems like everything is back to normal. But wait, as his last Pokeball is put into the machine, suddenly the room begins to fill with Pokeballs. Blue is so shocked he can't even move. All he can do is watch the very floor beneath him disappear under a sea of Pokeballs and glitched up mess. Eventually, Nurse Joy turns off the machine and the room returns to normal, but he's one Pokeball short. His Raticate never made it back from the glitch dimension.
Well, that's it for this mini-myth marathon. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a fun night trick-or-treating, partying, or however you choose to spend your Halloween. As for me, I think I'll be playing some Pokemons. See you next time!